Welcome back to FastFreddyRC, and today we're going to start the build process of the new Tamiya Hornet EVO. Very cool. I'm super excited about this one because the Hornet itself, the original, was such an iconic car, and I turned the one that I built into a Tyco turbo hopper because that's the one that was my very first RC. But this one, because it's the 40th anniversary, I am going to do this box art. And I just think it's such a cool idea for Tamiya to have taken an iconic car and then given it some modern updates. Now, normally I would show you a set of ball bearings here and say the first thing you need to do is get yourself a set of full ball bearings to make sure that your car has the greatest chance of lasting a long time, because there's a lot less wear and tear if you use ball bearings right from the start. But this kit comes with full ball bearings, which is awesome. So let's just get right into the manual. Now, I'm not going to go over everything here. They've got some basic things about RC that you want to know about, but we'll go right into the manual itself. So you can see here, step one, we're into bag A, charging the battery. Now, I say this with every other kit. I'm not doing this right off the bat because this is for when we're checking to make sure that the servo's in neutral. We're not going to be at that step for a while, so I'm not going to be charging it. You're welcome to do what you want to do, but that's just something I wait until we're actually at that step for. But step two, we're going to build the differential gear. So we're going to be working on the gearbox right away. Then in step three, attaching the counter gear. And it's so cool to see because we're working on a Hornet, but this is a DTO2 gearbox. So it's a completely different way of building this kit. Very cool. Then in step four, we're going to be working on the gearbox. So we're going to put that all together. And then in step five, we're going to work on the motor. Get the motor plate on there, and then I guess we're also working with the spur gear in this step too. Then in step six, we're going to be attaching the motor, and this is where we're going to be putting our pinion on once this is all attached. Very cool. And they show you how you're going to do that, and I'll show you a couple of tips with that too as we get into the build. Then in step seven, we're going to be attaching the gear cover. Very cool. Got to grease things up. And then in step 8, attaching the rear lower arms. Very cool. And again, it just feels like you're building an entirely different kit just because of all these different changes that they've made to this Hornet EVO. Then in step 9, we're going to attach the rear upper arms. Very cool. Again, it's quite a different design. And then in step 10, attaching the rear axles, and they're actually wanting you to use some Threadlock, I believe. Oh no, anti-wear grease for that. Interesting. I know the kit comes with Threadlock as well. So step 10, we're pretty much building that back end, and look how different that is to an original Hornet. So cool. Then in step 11, we're going to attach the rear bulkhead. Very cool. Interesting design. And then in step 12, we're going to be attaching the gearbox. Now look how cool this is. We have an original Grasshopper Hornet bathtub chassis, and we're going to attach a modern day DTO2 rear end and gearbox to that chassis. And you can see how this is all going to be attached. That is just too cool to see. It's like bringing the past in with the new, that's bringing the past and bringing the future together. I don't know, it's just too cool. Then in step 13, we're going to be attaching the Underguard, and that's very interesting design. And then in step 14, we're attaching the side guards, and now we're going back to how it would be, let's say, in an original Hornet. So for the first 13 steps, we're actually doing something brand new. Then in step 15, attaching the front upper mount. Again, that's a different design. If you can imagine how the axles used to attach to this in the original design. And then in 16, attaching the front damper guards. So they've got to be attached. Interesting. Notice there's a plate that goes over top of all of this. Interesting. And then in step 17, we're working on the Servo Horn. Interesting. And it's looking like they want you to do something to the horn, which is different, because remember, in the original design, we have these little metal bars that you kind of push in and twist and they fit. You actually need to make these bigger for this kit. And of course, now with 17, we're into bag B as well. Interesting. That's different. Then in step 18, this is where we're going to be checking the RC equipment. So this is where you are going to need that battery so that we can make sure our servo's in neutral. But very, very cool. And once that's done, we're going to move into step 19, and we're going to attach the steering servo. Pretty similar design here, sort of, but not. We'll see how this all goes together, because when I was doing the unboxing, you will have noticed that the steering is completely different to the original Hornet. So we'll see how this goes. Interesting placement of how all this needs to be attached. Very, very cool. Then in step 21, we're going to attach the rear body mount. Interesting. So that, yeah, different to our original Hornet design. Very cool. Then in step 22, we're going to work with the steering rods. Notice that the steering rods have these adjuster pieces on them as well, which is why there's a wrench, a hex wrench included in the kit, so that you can make adjustments on the fly, I believe. And then in step 23, we're attaching the steering linkage. And look how different this is actually to an original Hornet. Wow. So this should be a lot more stable and a lot more, I guess you could say, positive steering, just because it'll be stronger than how the original Hornet is. Interesting. Then in step 24, we're going to work on the front lower arms. Very, very cool. Love it. And then in 25, we're going to attach the front lower arms. And of course, the steering arms are going to, or the steering mechanism is going to fit in there. And again, if you remember the original Hornet and the way that the arms would kind of pop into something and then you'd put a piece over top to hold them in, this is a completely different design. Very, very cool. It's just so cool to take an old kit and then update it 40 years later. Very, very cool. So front upper arms, we're going to be working on those. Then in step 27, we're going to be working on the front axles. And again, this is kind of a totally different design. The new axles all together. And 28, we're going to attach the front axles. So they're going to be attached. You can see that at the bottom, we got a screw pin, and then we've got the arms on the top that can be adjusted for, what is it? I think it was for toe in, if I remember correctly with this, or camber. I can't remember. We'll see as we put this together. Then in step 29, front dampers 1. Well, this is where we're going to be building those shocks and start the whole process of putting those together. Then in step 30, we've got the front dampers 2. So this is where we're going to fill the dampers with oil, and I'll show you how to do that as we go. 31, front dampers 3. This is where we're going to add our springs, and depending on what kind of suspension you want with this, whether it be hard or soft, there are some pieces here that we're going to be able to use to adjust how soft or hard that front dampening is. And then in 32, we're going to attach the front dampers, and it just looks so cool. It's so different to the original. That's just awesome. Then in 33, we're going to attach the front bumper. So that's going to be attached there, and looks like we're also putting in some screw pins. Interesting. We waited till this step to do that. Well, this will be interesting. So 34, we're now going to work on the rear dampers now. So bit of a repeat here. 35, rear dampers 2. We're going to fill those with oil. Very cool. Step 36, we're going to work on rear dampers 3 and put those together. And again, we've got our little pieces here to adjust whether you want softer or harder dampening. And then attaching the rear dampers, there's how we're going to be doing that. Very, very cool. And then in 38, the rear wheels. Yes, my nemesis. And really, this is just the same as the Frog and the original Hornet, etc., etc. I did a video on how to do these the best way. Feel free to take a look. It's the method I've found to be easiest, because I remember doing one of these and it took me almost 40 minutes, and I just decided I'm not doing it anymore. And my thumbs and fingers were so sore from trying to put it together that I came up with a different method. So I use pliers, but you'll see if you take a look at that video. It may be helpful for you. I know I'm not going to do it the way they suggest. It's just such a pain. Anyway, let's move on. So in step 39, attaching the rear wheels, well, pretty straightforward here. We're going to use, and I think they're using the same pieces that they did in the original Hornet for the back end in terms of how those attach. Very, very cool. And then in 40, we're going to be working on the front wheels. These aren't so bad. I can do this without doing the method I was telling you. The fronts are a lot more pliable, so it's easier to get that inside the front wheels than it is the rear. And I mean, I actually like these frog wheels because I think it's so cool actually screwing them together when you've put these on. I think the screws actually kind of make, I don't know, they give it a neat look, to be honest. And then in 41, we're going to attach the front wheels. Same sort of thing. We've got our full bearings that are going to go on either side, and we'll attach them with our flange nuts. And then in 42, installing the battery pack, we're going to put this on, put the battery in, and then slide that across. Now, what's interesting is, because this is different, one of the things about the Grasshopper and the Hornet is they always said that this battery box was prone to popping off. So if you were using it hard, or just things happen, or it just wears out over time, this would pop off, and people would put they'd make their own Servo Horn connector clip that would hold this together. Well, Tamiya's, I think, realized that, and now there's a cover lock, which I think is super, super cool. So even after you've put that together, this gets attached and it stops that battery door from popping off. So that's definitely a modern redo of this door, and it needed it. I know mine popped off on the Grasshopper after a very big jump. So that is a very, very cool redesign for this kit. Awesome. And then in 44, this is where we're going to do the steering adjustments. Now you'll notice with this, they're showing how you would twist this on or off, and there is a hex wrench to help with this as well. But typically what I'll do is I won't attach the ball connectors to the steering until this has been figured out. So I'll wait probably to this step to do any of this. I won't actually attach these ball connectors from earlier, but we'll see, because you can see here there is a wrench to be able to turn this. So there's a possibility with this design you actually can just do this on the fly without having to take any of these off, which again, that's a great modern update. So very, very cool. Then we're going to move on to working on the body. And so for 45, we got to make the holes. And again, I've got a video using a body reamer, and really the body reamer, here, I'll put a link to the video right there. The body reamer is a fantastic tool for doing this. It's very precise, and you can make sure that you don't screw this up, because it's all by hand, but it does make it very simple. Then in 46, we got to cut out the body. Very, very cool, and we'll go through that whole process. And then in 47, we got to paint the body. And I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do this part yet, but I'm sure I'm going to mask this all off, and obviously it's all going to be black. I'm still debating whether I put couple of little things, because you'll notice on the box art they show the roll cage has silver. I'm not sure whether I'll do it or whether I'll just paint the whole thing black just to make it easier. I don't know. We'll see as we go along. Then in 48, the markings. This is where we'll put on all those original decals, and you bet I am definitely going to do this box art, so very, very cool. And then in 49, we got to work on the body. So we've got to add the wing to the body itself, put on our lights, we've got to paint those up, and we've got to paint the driver. Now there's a possibility while I'm building this, I may start painting this earlier so that by the time we're at this step, he's already ready to go and able to be installed. And the same thing with the lights. So I may end up doing that as well. It's kind of interesting. They've got on the side the way those decals are, but very, 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 very cool. And then in step 50, we're going to be attaching the body. And I mean, this is going to be a simple step, a couple of pins. Well, 3 pins actually, and I won't be using the plastic aerial because the aerials on these new receivers are very short, and I've not found there to be any issues with interference, and I would rather not have an aerial sticking out the top if I can help it. So very, very cool. So that is the end of the instructions. There's 50 steps, but I will quickly show you this. There are actually options that you can get so that you can change out a few things. So if using hop-up option wheels and tires, I see. So depending on the wheels that you want, you won't have an E3. There's an E2. Interesting. We'll take a closer look at that. It probably gives you the hex adapter instead of using this E3 piece. And it's if using hop-up option wheels and tires, I see. But the E2 piece is actually included in the kit. Oh, that'll be interesting. I'll definitely take a look at that. And then you can see here, if using a Type 380 motor, who on earth is going to go to a 380 if it comes with a 540? Well, that's interesting. But yeah, because when you build the holiday buggy, if you're using a 380, there's this other piece you have to put in that allows it to be in here and more secure, because you can see that that piece holds it up. But I gotta tell you, if this thing's got a 540, who wants to go slower? Hey, but I don't know. I guess if you're in training, maybe you're an RCer in training, you want to do that. But I won't be doing that. So anyways, that is the manual overview for the new 2024 40th anniversary edition of the Hornet EVO. So if you are planning on following along, do subscribe, hit that notification button, because as the videos come out, I will be doing a very in-depth step-by-step build, and you'll be able to get a notification on that. So until next time, we'll see you in another video.